Welcome to the Life Coaching Podcast, your go-to source for inspiration, transformation, and actionable insights. I am your host, Angel Gonzalez, and I am thrilled to have you on this journey towards personal excellence and empowerment. In each episode, I dive deep into the realms of life coaching, wealth creation, and personal development, sharing transformational stories from individuals who have achieved significant breakthroughs in their lives. Whether you are aiming to redefine your career, improve your relationships, or discover your true passions, this podcast is your partner in unlocking your full potential. Join me every week to hear from thought leaders, experts, and everyday heroes who share their practical strategies and heartfelt stories of success. If you are ready to unleash your potential, let's get started. Welcome back to this series of the Life Coaching Podcast with Angela Bennett. If you join us in our first episode, you will recall how we explored the power of self-awareness and how our limiting beliefs can create invisible walls that hold us back in life. We learned that by becoming aware of these barriers, we can start tearing them down and creating the space for growth and transformation. In today's episode, we are taking that conversation one step further. We are diving deeper into how our emotions play a huge role in breaking those walls down. Now, I know many of us have been taught to suppress our feelings, but what if I told you that unexpressed emotions could actually be sabotaging your progress and health? That's right, our emotions are powerful forces, and when we don't understand or express them properly, they can literally keep us stuck in unhealthy cycles. To help guide us through this, I am thrilled to bring the second part of the conversation with Angela Bennett. She is an expert in NLP and emotional intelligence, and together we'll explore how emotional awareness combined with practical tools like NLP can help you take control of your emotions and ultimately your life. When you were mentioning that you work with your clients with this purpose of helping them to align themselves internally. You are also an expert NLP, you are also an expert hypnotherapist. And most of your clients coming to you for both reasons. The reason number one is your career as equestrian, and the reason number two, your career as a coach. In this particular area, I am curious about how you combine all these skills to bring one absolute result at the end of the process of helping people with the matters, the concern points, and the issues that they are experiencing every single day.
Yeah. Okay. So I've actually got a really, I've got a great example. And this is a client who is a horse rider and who came for me for some confidence issues around riding. So, you know, NLP, we have lots of little simple, quick tools that can start to help us reframe the way we think. So a quick rundown about our own worldview is formed quite early in our life. And these are programs that have been put in and are now held in the unconscious mind. And they can be tightly held beliefs that may have been taught to you through the family unit or through school or societal do's and don'ts, right? Rules. And these govern all your thoughts and actions. So they're a major driver. So, you know, if you have a belief around money doesn't grow on trees and it's hard to get, then that fuels all your thoughts and behaviors and actions around money. Yeah, to take a very simplistic example. If you have made a belief about yourself when you were younger from maybe some experiences or events in your life, and you created a belief that you are not good enough, that's a very deeply held identity belief that, again, will drive all your thoughts, all your words, or your actions, behaviors. So NLP looks at the core of NLP of getting back to those beliefs and creating a shift. Different layers we've got to get through first to get to those deeper structures. So I've been working with this client doing that. And then the methodology that I use mostly to get to those deeper shifts, those ones that really can impact how you live your life, I use timeline therapy, a method developed by Dr. Tad James. And the quick version is we remove major emotions like anger, fear, sadness, hurt, guilt, shame. We remove the attachment of that emotion to the first event when you felt that emotion. So we go back along the person's timeline, find that event. We don't relive that negative emotion, but rather we look down on the event as if we're floating above. So stay with me here, as if we're floating above. And what we want to take from that are all the positive learnings. Like, what did you learn from the event, rather than looking at the negative? So we take the positive learnings about ourselves, and they tend to come out framed in really positive I am identity statements, because what it does is it lets you look at the event as if you're from a third person point of view. So it gives dissociation, it gives you space. It's like zooming out and you can see the bigger picture. The effect of that lessens the emotional pull and level of the emotion whenever you remember that event, right? Which is the trigger. And if we can lessen that, then you now have an opportunity to think something different and take different actions. So I did that process with this client. She had some massive shifts. She made some huge, huge changes within her life, is back to pursuing her dream career in archaeology, and going global with that. And is just, the shift I can see within the client is there's a deeper self-confidence. She's far more self-actualized, self-possessed, and with that self-confidence comes a amount of peace and calm and knowing and firm boundaries, because you know your worth, and there are behaviors and things you just won't accept anymore. The knock-on effect of all of that in her life is that, and she mentioned it just the other day in a riding lesson, she said, I find her relationship with her horse, she finds, is very different now that she herself is acting and behaving differently within her own life. And she's she's bringing a different presence to that relationship with her horse, and her horse is reacting to that in a different way. And, her horse is a mare, and mares can be, a little tricky.
That's right. I don't know why you said that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, and I say tricky in a good way. I mean it in a good way, but, mares are very clear about their boundaries. So again, they're not for everybody. Not everybody gets on with them. But that's been a really big shift in that client. And, when she's ready for the next layer, we will repeat that process. And then there's an opportunity to go a bit deeper, right? And she'll release some more emotions tied to more events. And that will create more ripples and change in her life. But she's had a huge shift, and it's one I've experienced before with other clients. I just think hers is a really nice story, because she's also a rider, and she herself picked up on the fact, she could see how her interaction with her horse had changed because she'd done internal work and had changed things in her non-horsey life. and the effect that was having on her relationship with her horse. So really powerful stuff.
I love when you mention timeline therapy, because I am passionate about it. I love
Yeah.
how people can get the results that they want
Yeah.
by overlooking or looking from above what is the root
Yes.
of their problems.
Yeah.
And usually the root of the problem are anchored to those emotions, those negative emotions that create negative beliefs. For example, shame and anger or guilt are very powerful, low energy emotions that hold people back from all their life if
Yes.
they allow them. If they allow them. And it is incredible how in matter of minutes or probably 1 hour, you can create that new experience, unlocking those seals that are preventing people from growth, from finding their true self. Because at the end of the day, when we talk about unleashing our power, or when we talk about developing our true potential, or when we talk about shifting identity, we are actually tapping into our inner self, our inner power, and realizing that we are in the position of achieving more, and not just from the material, what you can get, what you can buy, but achieving more in order to develop ourselves and becoming the type of person that we want to see in ourselves. Because it's not about what you see in other person, it's about what you want to see in the mirror every single day. And we can get that in matter of hours, dedication, and stepping out of the comfort zone that actually hold us in that cave that don't allow us to move towards our dreams, goals, and the best life that we can possibly create for ourselves.
Yeah. And it's, I love how you mentioned that those, some of those big emotions, anger, shame, guilt, fears, another big one, are really low vibration. And the thing is, those, whenever the first event, the root event, first event happened, and that belief was made, and that emotion is now anchored to that moment, and we just get sent triggers through our day, don't we? And anything can be a trigger, right? And it just fires off that trigger again, and off we go into our pre-programmed response. And quite often we really don't understand that, that's held in the unconscious. And so most people are not aware that it's happening. So awareness is definitely the first stage. But what I love also, like you say, you can get a quick shift in a relatively small amount of time, is that in timeline therapy, when you can, it's like I see it as removing a pin where that first emotion is anchored, right?
Yes.
And we remove that pin, and then all the subsequent ones, it's sort of like a domino effect. Every other event where we felt that anger or fear sort of all collapses, and until you've been through the process, it sounds a bit unreal. It sounds like, oh, well, that seems too easy or too simple. But, when you've done the process yourself, and I have, it's incredible the shift you get, and you can go from this really low vibration state. Afterwards, you sort of feel like, I know there's something different in my body, but you might not be able to articulate what that is. But you just know every cell in your body feels different, right? There might be some tears if you need to release some big emotions. That's fine to do. Get it all out, move all that stuck emotion out of the body. And then you come to a place where you mostly operate from those higher vibration feelings. Joy, one of the highest vibration emotions, joy, love, self-love, self-compassion, forgiveness, all of those wonderful things. And it's not that you just sit in that space all the time. Of course, there's grief and sadness and anger, and it's right and appropriate to feel those things at times, but you want to only feel them at an appropriate level. We don't want to get stuck in inappropriate amounts of anger and not being able to get out of it, right? So you dip into sadness or grief or anger, and but you feel it, you process it, it's gone, you back up again, right? And I just feel now mostly that I'm in a very magnetic state, because there are only certain energies I allow in. And the path you want to live your life on becomes clearer.
Yes.
And everything that you don't want in your being, you just say no to it. You just deflect. No, don't want that. No, don't want that. No, this is what I want. I'm going to keep pursuing things that, you know, feed my brain, feed my soul. And, you know, and I want to look after my body so that I can keep enjoying all these things. So it really does put you on a different path. And some of it, I don't know, it just feels to me automatic. It's sort of a no-brainer. I'm very clear on, no, I don't want this. I'm not going down that path. My path is over here, chasing these emotions. Well, not chasing, but I'm drawn to these things that keep me in a state of joy, love, happiness, creativity, right? And that doesn't mean I don't like to be challenged on things, because that's part of our growth too. Is, you know, you don't want to end up in an echo chamber. That's not healthy for us. We should always look at all different sides of well thought out opinions, theories, right? Okay, and keep learning. So I'm a big one on curiosity and learning. But you will pick up things. You'll be like, oh, well, that's really interesting, but no, it's not for me. But I can see how it is for others, but it's not for me. So there is also a sense of knowing that everybody out there is doing the best they can with the resources they have right now. And that gives a different understanding. And I think just a really lovely level of compassion and tolerance for others. They are where they are in their journey, and that's fine. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that something important that you mentioned is the fact that we can actually experience that shift in a certain amount of time, in relative short amount of time, but it takes a long term to understand that this is possible, just because we need to learn how to unlearn what we already received from our birth. And I want to make a remark here. Our identity is the compound or the result of three main elements. I am talking about belief system, values, and roles. The roles that you play in your life, the values that you practice every single day, whether it is something from the conscious mind or the unconscious mind, and the belief systems that are rooted and driving your life every single day. Every single action is motivated by your belief. Whether you believe is possible or not possible, you are right. And that's the reason, because you just believe that it's rooted in your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind is responsible of 90 to 95% of your behaviors, action, and thoughts. So when you realize, and it takes time, I can say it in 1 minute now, but it took me a while to understand that this is actually a fact, it's happening, and the brain operates in that frequency, in that way. So when people understand that, learn that, they realize, well, definitely, if this is in this way, if we operate in this way, and I am 30 years old or 40, 50 years old, and I have been operating like that for all these years, then my first lesson in life is the responsible for me to be in this position, act in this way, and get the results that I have been getting all my life. But interestingly, most people can be aware of that and not decide not to act in a different way that can actually help them to grow and become whatever they want to become, to contribute with the world in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for 20 years, that was me a bit too. I'd started thinking that potentially the majority were right, that you should play along and, work hard and play this role and not speak out too much, and certainly not speak against the status quo. And I started falling into that, and it just compounded, every year it just compounded until we got to where the story was about my horse. But that's interesting, about the roles, as you mentioned. It's certainly, your beliefs and your values drive everything. And if your beliefs and your values are, again, for simplicity of an easy example, if your belief is I'm not worthy or not deserving, then your values are, you value everything about yourself lower, so your values are lower, and your role becomes that person who is not deserving and not worthy. And that is the role you play out in your life, wondering all the time, as often you can do, why is this happening to me? Right. So, and I think that's true for many of us. I think, my question was, well, what is happening here? It just took me a while to see over the wall. And because I'd already been in this kind of coaching, well, not coaching space, but because I'd already been in this kind of reading space with people like Deepak Chopra, in his books 30 odd years, I was already in that space in my early 20s, and then and then life happens and you change to fit life, right? So and I'd gone away from it, but I had the foundations there of knowing that, okay, well, it's not really, even though sometimes I'd like to blame the external world, the little voice inside would say, yes, but that's not really how it works, is it? So I always had that little Angela sitting on my shoulder going, well, it's probably you, so you need to do something about that. But if you can, that's right, if you can get to those beliefs and values, one of my coaches calls it lifting the veil. And lifting the veil, or you could think of it as taking off the blindfold, or waking up, or looking over the wall. I mean, any of those kind of analogies work, don't they? But that's what it is. And until you can kind of see over that, the little world you've created for yourself, until you can see outside of that, then you are in a position of you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So it can be quite hard.
Life Master is the ultimate tool for discovering your real self, even from any personal constraint that might hinder your growth. The purpose of this journey is to nurture your mental health and foster a space of self-development, self-awareness, and self-love, which can impact positively thoughts, actions, and behaviors. Embark in this exciting world of personal growth by committing to answer a handful of daily questions designed to guide you through a path of development, happiness, and fulfillment. It's interesting that you mentioned, and I totally agree with you, in the fact that we end up creating a really small world for ourselves. But the reality is also that it is influenced by the environment in which we are. And that's why NLP working one of the first level, the environment, and we can point out, no, it's the behavior what's wrong, but what's about the environment, how the environment influenced that behavior, and how that behavior is influenced by the first lessons that you learn in your life that created that belief. And that belief end up being the trigger for the unhealthy behaviors that drive people to get unhealthy results or negative results in life. And also you mentioned, when you are talking about the status quo, I am a natural challenger of the status quo in every single stage in my life. I always question why things need to be like that. Although I am also a believer of following the rule, but I always assess, well, where the rule is coming from, what this rule is trying to make me do on how this rule is going to influence the quality of the results that I am getting and that the people around me is getting as well. So when you assess those points, you assess your environment, you assess the rules, you assess the status quo, and you assess the behavior as a separate beings or separate entity that influence one human being or one person or one group of or a group of people, you realize that there is much more. And when you say you need to step over the wall and look what's actually happening, you realize that there is much more that is affecting that human being that is trying to find in NLP, coaching, hypnotherapy, or any sort of approach from the psychology, find a solution, because people end up with many feelings, with many emotions that they don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to manage them, and they don't know how to get out of those spirals that I love to say they are spirals because end up throwing people down, or those boxes that doesn't allow the light to come in, just because they have been programmed by the environment, the schools, the rule, or any other unspoken version of the game that need to be followed. And these people end up in those states in which their results, their performance, their entire lives are affected by those issues. And there you come with different approaches, with different with the horses, or with the NLP or hypnotherapy, or just having an extraordinary conversation, sharing with another human being from the state of compassion and state of gratitude, trying to bring that person again to balance and find that equilibrium and that moment in which people are out of alignment, that internal alignment that we were talking about, to get a better result for their life. That's why I'm so passionate to this. I'm so passionate about coaching, NLP, and how we actually to the better life for the people that we can impact, that we can be in contact with.
100% agree. I firmly believe all things are possible. And my mother always said that to me. You can do whatever you want in life, and just all things are possible. We can really just do whatever we want to do, right? What we get, what we might experience is, if we are doing that in our immediate environment where others are not ready for that, they're not at that place themselves, then they will push back against, right? And it's that moment that we've just got to go, that's okay, they can push back. I'm not accepting what they are saying. So when people say, oh, you can't do that, or doing this is hard, or whatever, they're only quite often they're only saying things like that out of a want to protect you and keep you safe, right? So it comes from a place generally of love, but it's then your choice you either accept that or you don't. And and that's, like I was saying before, that's what I started doing. I actually started to accept what was being pushed back onto me, but it was me who accepted it. And, look where that took me, somewhere I didn't want to be, and the nice thing about doing those processes in NLP, the timeline especially, is you start to be able to just zoom out on your life and look back over your life and see the patterns that you were in and the results you were getting because of those patterns. And then you realize that, oh, okay, I can see how I kept myself stuck there, not often intentionally, because it was just a program running in the background, right? But you can see those patterns, and that ability to zoom out also then gives you that wonderful view of actually how all things are possible. And in fact, you can go and do anything with your life. And when you do things that are driven from a different set of beliefs, a positive, affirming set of beliefs and values, then you will only naturally do things that are good for you. And when you are doing things that are good for you, that's actually really good for the people around you.
Yes.
Not least of which, you are now becoming a living example. And, you know, I'm always at the end of every year, I'm always looking and asking myself, with the work I'm doing and what I've learned through, you know, my training with NLP, is, okay, well, and hypnosis, well, how am I being a living example?
Yes.
Because I need to be a living example of the work, right? So
Yes.
Otherwise it's just lip service. And that is inspiring for people, because then people start to go, oh, actually, I can see a real change there, and they get interested, and that's maybe the first spark for them. So it's good in that way. And I think the other big way it's good for the people around you is it's a very healing work. So now if I look at who I was, you know, kind of stomping through the world in my angry state, emotional state,
Yes.
angry, hurt. So I was projecting hurt and anger out on other people, right?
Yes.
I didn't want to. It was coming out of me. Afterwards, I'd feel terrible and then ashamed. And, you know, you go through the whole gamut. But being able to just take that time for yourself and heal yourself, you're then not putting that out on others around you. You actually take an energy of peace and love and calm and compassion and tolerance and understanding, and still anger and sadness and a bit of fear, but it's always in smaller amounts, and it's appropriate to the event that's happening at the moment, and then it's gone. And that's how emotions need to be expressed. Now, you've just got me on another rant now. So this is the other thing I want to this is the other thing I want to touch on here, specifically around emotions, is
Yes.
we're not taught emotions. We express them very freely when we're younger. And that is good and healthy. And if you look at very young children, they can be crying and having a tantrum in 1 minute, and then it passes, and then the next minute they're out playing and having okay, so that's quite a natural expression of emotion. At that moment, the child was upset and angry, and maybe they were a bit tired too, and that just compounded everything, but they let it all out. They let it out, it moved out of their body, they expressed it, and then they just got on with, you know, playing with their toys or having a nap or eating or the next thing in their day, right? Okay, now, we don't want to, as adults, go out into the world and every time we're a bit angry, have a major tantrum, because that's not always appropriate.
It's not socially acceptable.
That's right. So, but what that starts to become is, don't feel any emotion. That morphs into, don't cry, don't be upset. So if someone is upset and crying, what do we often do? We say, it's okay, don't cry. When we're meaning it we don't want them to be upset, but actually let them be upset. Cry if you have to have a little cry. Let it out. In anger, be a bit angry, but express it and move it out and move on. If you're a little scared, okay, you're feeling fear at the moment. And that's another important thing around, you know, NLP. We're very careful with our languaging. So it's not, I am scared, it's, I feel fear. It's not, I am angry, because that's an identity statement. It's, I feel angry, I feel sad, right? So around emotions, we are taught to suppress them. And there's already lots of good evidence about how bad that is for our body and how we are literally making ourselves sick with repressed and suppressed emotions. And I think the other side, coming from my education point of view or background, is, we're taught not to express them, but then we also don't have a good vocabulary for emotions. So if you talk to people in everyday life, it's like, well, how are you feeling? It's, you know, I'm feeling a bit crap. Okay, well, what does that mean? Oh, I don't know, you know, just crap. And so we're kind of losing that ability to express it in clear vocabulary. So we're losing the we don't have the vernacular to express what we're feeling. So, and this is where, the emotions wheel or something like that can really help. And I think, I'm now thinking, okay, well, what sort of little program or videos or something or a little ebook or something, and there are already plenty out there, but I'm now myself thinking, okay, well, we need to get adults learning about their emotions again.
Yes.
Okay, there's already some quite good programs for teenagers, which is great. And I think as adults, you're just kind of, oh, well, you're an adult now, so you should understand the code of how to behave as an adult. And
Right.
and that's not always necessarily true. Or perhaps the code we learn actually isn't supporting or serving us, right, in the best way. So perhaps we can learn a different way. So I'm really just very interested in sort of educational coaching around emotions and how to express them.
Yeah.
I think a really interesting thing I learned from a physiological point of view is from Jill Bolt Smith, Jill Bolt Taylor. Oh gosh, her name's just gone from my brain. Anyway, she's a neuroscientist, had a stroke, recovered, but was able to sort of process and experiment on herself. She found that the physiological time lapse of emotion in your body, if you have the thought, produce the hormones, kick off the chemical reaction of, let's say, anger, the physiological reaction of anger in your body, if you just allow the chemicals to run the course through the body and dissipate, it takes 90 seconds. That's it, gone. So,
fantastic.
Yeah, so her point to that was, so if you are staying angry from that one event for longer, you need to ask yourself, hang on, is that me just having the thought and kicking the whole process off again? And like you said, in a spiral, right? For me, I think in a loop, it just becomes a loop. You just go, oh, yeah, that's right. I was angry about that driver. And now I've just kicked off the physiological response in my body again. And if I keep thinking, yeah, that driver made me really angry. Oh, I'm so angry at that driver, in the words we use, we start to embody anger and we keep kicking off the physiological process. So I think that's a really interesting thing. And NLP works well in that way, in that
Yes.
a lot of NLP tools are that, they're a pattern interrupt, or I call it in horse riding, I just call it my circuit breaker, right? So because
Yes.
we have muscle physical patterns in riding, and sometimes a rider might be doing something with a hand we don't want them to. So I would teach them a circuit breaker. So before the body goes into the pattern, they have a way of stopping the pattern. And it's exactly the same with the brain. And the NLP tools can work really well with that pattern interrupt. And if you can stop that pattern from just processing, you then get a pause, a moment, and an opportunity to choose something else. So that can really help with shifting people out of that emotional loop of keeping experiencing the same emotion, and shift intentionally into a different state, into a different emotional state. And you can choose what state you'd like to shift into: confidence, happiness, joy, any of those. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
I totally agree with you on that, Angela. You just mentioned two aspects that I would like to recap in order to make a point, a clarification for the audience right now. One of those components that you mentioned is related to self-awareness, when you understand and you can identify what emotion are you experiencing in the moment. And for people, for us, our human being and part of this society, it is easy for us to explain a physical pain rather than emotional pain or emotional constraint. We can easily point, oh, I feel a pain on my elbow, but we can explain very well sometimes when we feel that sensation here in the stomach. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
hard for us to just to say, accept, or admit that we have fear, that we feel
Mm.
fear, or we feel overwhelmed in some cases. Although NLP, we don't use the word overwhelmed, but
Mm.
it is a common emotion that we can
Mm.
experience at any point due to different circumstances.
Yeah.
When we are able to bring that language or use the language to describe the proper emotion that we are feeling at certain point, we
Mm.
actually are winning half of the battle.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, and you mentioned it perfectly, I just feel crap. Well, how do you resolve that problem?
Yeah.
How do you manage feeling crap? Because feeling crap, I don't know how to feel crap. I feel sometimes sadness.
Yeah.
I feel sometimes overwhelmed. I feel anger.
Mm.
I don't know how to
Mm.
feel crap.
Yeah.
And I don't want to
Yeah.
feel crap, actually.
No.
But the point, the bottom line is that we lost that part of
Yeah.
ourselves, or we never learned it, which
No.
could be even more dramatically issue that we need to sort in of life. And I will bet on that particular point that we never learned
Mm.
how to actually describe our own emotions, how to tap on our own emotions, identify them,
Yeah.
and then be able to heal them. And when you mention, for example, that it takes 90 seconds
Mm.
to actually make the state shift,
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to mention this. I've been meditating all my life. Since
Yeah.
I was 9 years old, I
Wow.
learned how to meditate.
Mm.
And sometimes it takes me hours.
Yeah.
If the emotion is too big, and anybody in the world can experience a big emotion, high emotions, sometimes it takes me hours to get out of certain emotions because, as you well explained, we fall into those patterns that drag people into the spiral that create certain emotions. And if you don't know how to describe it, imagine how can be for anybody just to make that shift pattern. But from the neuroscience, and it's so important that you mention it,
Mm.
when we are aware that our emotions actually triggers certain toxins that
Yeah.
go through our blood system
Mm.
and create the illness, the disease that
Yeah.
we feel in our lives, we actually start looking at them more carefully and
Yeah.
understand that cortisol in high levels combined with adrenaline is not good for your body.
No.
It doesn't help your immune system, it doesn't help your nervous system, and it actually causes so many diseases in the people that when they realize they have it in their body, sometimes it requires much investment in time, effort, and prayer to get
Yeah.
out of those situations. But when
Mm.
we are actually aware and we are able to realize that what
Yeah.
I am feeling right now is
Yeah.
anger
Yeah.
because of this particular issue or this situation that is happening in my environment. And the best way that I can
Mm.
heal that anger is by doing this and shifting that
Mm.
emotion in a healthy way in the moment.
Yeah.
We are actually taking care of our bodies, ourselves, and making sure that we can prolong our life in a healthier way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
100%.
thank you for bringing that up because it is so important and it is so current that we bring that
Mm.
awareness and we can start reading and educating more
Yeah.
people about this. I
Yeah.
am Gen X as well, and I
Yeah.
feel sometimes that I need to relearn the
Yes.
names, the definitions, the concepts of how we feel at certain point and how we can actually address those
Mm.
feelings in order to live in balance, to
Yeah.
achieve that real balance, which is being tapping in ourselves, in our reality,
Mm.
to be
Mm.
more functional and be able to establish this connection, to establish
Yeah.
these relationships that are actually helpful. On the
Yes.
contrary, when we are in the position of enclosing ourselves
Mm.
with negative emotions, low
Yeah.
energy emotions, then
Mm.
we stop being functional. We stop being able to connect with other people. We see people and we walk away. But that's
Yeah.
because all those issues are already set in that nervous system. Those issues are already set in the
Mm.
stem brain. Those
Mm.
issues are already set
Yeah.
in our subconscious mind and
Yes.
don't allow people just to be humans. Does it make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. 100%. Absolutely. I mean, there's so much you've said there that I could speak to.
As we wrap up today's discussion on how emotional awareness can unlock new possibilities for growth, I hope you are feeling inspired to start paying closer attention to your own emotional patterns and how they might be shaping your experiences. Next week, we are diving even deeper into a crucial aspect of personal transformation: how your environment influences your beliefs and behaviors. It's time to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. What role do the people around you, your surroundings, and even your habits play in keeping you stuck or pushing you forward? We will explore how to assess and shift these external influences so you can create a thriving, supportive environment for your personal growth. Trust me, you won't want to miss this powerful conversation. So, make sure to join me next week as we continue to unpack the tools and strategies that will help you take control of your life and your results. Until then, keep reflecting, keep learning, and keep moving forward. Thank you for tuning in to the Life Coaching Podcast. I hope that today's episode has empowered and inspired you to take bold steps towards your own personal and professional breakthroughs. If you found value in today's stories and insights, please share this episode with your friends and family, because your feedback fuels my mission to bring you even more impactful content. And next week, I will continue to explore the amazing potential within ourselves. Until then, keep striving, keep dreaming, and keep moving forward towards your best life. I am your host, Angel Gonzalez, and this is the Life Coaching Podcast.